y'all. Welcome to the B Channel podcast, where my objective is to bless, edify, and encourage others to live their best lives. Before we dive into today's episode, be sure to follow and or subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. And be sure to share this episode with a friend if it blesses you. You can also catch up with me at B Channel 27 on all my socials. I will include my link in the description below. So today's episode, I would just like to share some of my thoughts on relationships. Now, y'all go ahead and let me know if this is something that y'all would like to see more of, because I definitely enjoy the process of putting this together for y'all. So let me know, give me some feedback, and I will share more information about how to get in contact with me at the end of this episode. But without further ado, let's get into it. Love is complicated because it involves two different people trying to come together as one and stay dedicated and committed to each other through all the ups and downs. But, sometimes that can be hard without all the tools, and if there's trauma involved that hasn't been resolved, and you don't know how to communicate what you need and what you want, and if you are not being loved in your love language. And if life itself is complicated, why wouldn't two people coming together who are different be complicated? It would be easy to love everybody if they were the same as us, but that would be boring and nobody would learn anything. So it's kind of one of those things that just is what it is, but it's beautiful though. This is a good question. I think what triggers me in an argument is when people laugh or they don't take you seriously in terms of what you're saying. They dismiss your feelings and try to minimize what you're trying to tell them, and that just makes you feel like you're not heard, and it's disappointing and it's hurtful. I think how you deal with it is you just understand the person that you're dealing with, and you understand that this is how they have learned to deal with conflict. That does not, dismiss or justify what they're doing, but it just allows you to maintain some type of awareness to calm yourself down. Hey sis, thanks for the question. Now, when it comes to love languages, I go by, the 5 love languages that Gary Chapman talks about: words of affirmation, physical touch, gifts, acts of service, and quality time. But, all those are great, but it really depends on the person, what's going to be most effective. So, my why depends on who they are and what makes them feel loved. I can't use a love language that the person does not receive, because they're not going to feel loved in that way. So yeah, I got to take all that into consideration, who they are and what makes them feel loved. Hope that answers your question. This question really resonates with my spirit because I feel like a lot of us go through this. But the first thing that we have to do is understand that the way that we get treated is a mirror of how we're treating ourselves in that present moment. And people treat you how you allow them to treat you. But there's a caveat here. We have to understand that some people, they have their own agenda and they're relentless about accomplishing that agenda, whether you're on board with that agenda or not. So that's when you have to use discernment and take a step back and love those people from a distance, or just pray for them and let that be what it is, because some people are just never going to treat you the way that you deserve to be treated. It's not in their DNA to do so. Point blank. You can figure out if somebody is genuine by their actions. Don't just depend on what people say, because sometimes people can say one thing but do another thing. Also, you have to be observant and pay attention to their patterns. Now, the next thing is you have to, address it. Ask them directly about whatever it is that's concerning to you, if there's a concern that you have. And once you tell them about that and their behavior is still the same, there's no change, then that's how they are. And then you can move accordingly. With that information, you can move forward and decide what you want to do, or how big of a role you want that person to play in your life, or if not at all. I believe that you would know if you've mentally outgrown someone by how you interact with that person. Are you enthusiastic when you interact with that person? Are y'all on the same page about, the relationship, the friendship? Maybe they see things differently than you do, or you're thinking higher and they're still thinking a little bit lower. And it's just causing a conflict, that's causing a rift, right? And there are people that's in your life for a certain season and for a certain reason. And, they're either a lesson or a blessing. And everybody can't be in your life for the long haul. But it's kind of one of those things, like you have to step back and assess, are they adding value to my life, or are they subtracting value from my life? Are they an asset, or are they a liability in my life? Absolutely. I believe I've answered this question before, but it bears re-answering, because it's always these moments that come upon you and you begin to realize something. And one of the things that I've realized today is that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is step away from a friendship or a relationship. It takes love to show self-control and restraint, and watch how you speak to people, and understanding that your response is the only thing that you can control. And if you don't have anything productive or kind to say, don't say it, and just know that it's okay to walk away for your sanity. See, I value consistency. I value honesty. And there's so many other ones, but what I'm coming to understand is that empathy is one of those things that really takes the cake. Somebody being able to put themselves into your shoes, or just asking the right questions, to seek clarity about your feelings, and just really digging in deep, having those honest, vulnerable conversations. And you need empathy. That's an essential ingredient in order for you to have those kinds of conversations. So empathy is very important to me in a friendship, My dating requirements are that, first of all, that the person the man that I'm dating is a man of God, someone with integrity, someone who is considerate. They think of me and they know how to communicate effectively and consistently. And as strange as this might sound, someone who knows how to argue well. Because sometimes there is a misconception that, oh, you shouldn't argue. Arguing is bad. But you often figure out somebody's real feelings when you argue. And if you're not arguing, what's happening? Because you can't always agree on everything. That's not healthy either, because at the end of the day, we're different people. So at some point you're going to have a disagreement. That's life. There are some ways to know if you're in a healthy relationship. Do you trust each other? Can you talk about things freely and openly and not feel like you have to be on eggshells around this person? Can you be yourself? Are there healthy boundaries? Like, do they respect your need for alone time, for instance? Do they respect your core values, and do they reflect the values that are important to you in life? Are y'all on the same page in terms of defining the relationship, whether you want marriage or not, whether you want children or not, how you're going to live, and on the same page as far as finances and things like that? That's going to tell you, like, what kind of conversations are you having with this person? How do y'all interact with each other? That tells you a lot. Are you always right? You have to decide whether you want to be right or be happy in all of your relationships. I have learned that it's important to be able to take constructive criticism and have a teachable spirit. Pride destroys relationships. Humility restores them. On the flip side, if you are the one who is always wrong and the other person doesn't want to listen, learn how to respond, not react, and keep your peace. My rule of thumb is to appreciate your role as a seed planter, and maybe if it's God's will, He will come along later and water it. But don't you lose sleep over it. Okay? Remember that as you go about your day. Do you want to be happy or right? The choice is up to you. I believe that if you have to hide something from your partner, if you are confiding in somebody else and telling them things that you haven't even told your partner, if you are doing something that you would not want them to do behind your back, it's cheating. And it doesn't have to be physical. It can just be emotional and mental. That's really where it starts. Because you may start feeling neglected, and instead of talking to the person, you go talk to somebody else about it. And that is what causes the division. So anything that you would not want your partner to know about, or you wouldn't want done to you, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, is cheating. I think that this takes practice. When you are in any type of conversation with a person, it can be tempting to wait for your turn to talk. But the Word of God says in James 1:19 that we're supposed to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. So we have to prioritize listening to people and taking a beat, being okay with the pregnant pause. That's what I'm learning. I'm still in the process of learning this, so I'm not saying this from my high horse. We have to be okay with, taking our time and slowing down And then the more that you do that, then you might even have a better response than if you had rushed to say something, you know? I think that it depends on the situation. For instance, if you have children with that person, you're going to have to co-parent for the entirety of your lives, you know? So there's no getting around that. You have that bond for life. But I think there are other exceptions. Like if you split up with somebody and it was amicable and they were a good friend and there was no malice and there was no bitterness, then I don't see a problem with being friends with that person or staying in touch with that person. But if you move on to another relationship, that other person that you're with now, they may have a problem with that. So that's where you might, run into some issues. But other than that, I don't think that it's a bad thing. Okay, so I had to add a little bit more to this. So if you're listening to this, please go back and listen to part 1 as well. This is part 2 though. And I wanted to add that some people are just going to be better friends than they are partners. And, that's okay. That's just how it is sometimes. People are better suited to be your friend than to be in a relationship with you. So if there was no toxicity, there was nothing negative, there is no problem with staying in contact with that person. As long as everything is on the up and up and they add to your life and they're not a liability. That's the caveat. Hey y'all, I hope that something I said today blessed or resonated with you. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple, please do me a favor and leave a review and a rating so more people can find out about this podcast. Just to let y'all know, I am interested in being a guest on podcasts as well as interviewing guests on this podcast. If that is something that you're interested in, please send me a DM on Instagram at bchannel27 if you would like to collaborate. Or if you have book recommendations, you want to suggest some topics I should discuss, or you just want to give some feedback. I appreciate all the support and the love. Thank you so much. Peace and blessings.